Look at the top-line numbers, and Vietnam appears to be an economic miracle, with a GDP growth target hitting up to 8% and an official mandate to become a high-income nation by 2045. The surface-level story is one of relentless prosperity. But step away from the macroeconomic reports, and a very different reality sets in. Citizens are experiencing this boom through a lens of stagnant wages and rapidly rising living costs. The national wealth is growing on paper, but household grocery budgets are getting tighter. This chart shows regional fertility rates across Asia, revealing the ultimate biological symptom of economic stress. Vietnam's fertility rate has plunged to a historic low of 1.92, falling well below the replacement level. In Ho Chi Minh City, it triggered a red alarm, dropping to 1.39. When a population stops replacing itself, the workforce shrinks. If this paradox isn't solved soon, Vietnam is staring down a terrifying reality. The nation is getting old before it ever gets rich. A massive portion of the country's capital is trapped in what strategists are calling a blood clot. Nearly 25% of the nation's total credit, roughly 4.5 quadrillion VND, is locked inside stagnant, illiquid real estate. The era of cheap money and endless loan forbearance has hit a wall. Borrowers who bought into the market during promotional grace periods are now crashing into a maturity cliff, where their interest rates are brutally resetting to 14 or even 16%. Let's break down the math. If you buy a luxury shop house, it might generate a 2% rental yield, but the interest on the loan used to buy it is 14%. That 12% gap is a wealth leak of negative cash flow that is quietly bankrupting the over-leveraged middle class. This land speculation directly feeds the demographic crisis. When a basic apartment costs 20 years of a worker's salary, having a second child isn't a matter of preference. It becomes mathematically impossible. The paper wealth of empty luxury villas sitting on corporate balance sheets is actively siphoning cash away from everyday bank accounts. It is a system where stagnant concrete suffocates the real economy. Beyond real estate, the other pillar of the economy is industrial manufacturing, heavily driven by foreign direct investment. The export numbers look phenomenal, but they hide a massive vulnerability. Welcome to the assembly line trap. Multinational giants pour capital into the country to take advantage of cheap labor. They capture the highest profits at the top, while the local workforce takes the lowest value slice of the pie just for putting the pieces together. To make matters worse, almost all the high-tech components and raw materials are imported. If a finished product sells for $10, $8 goes to importing the fabric and machinery. Only $2 of actual value is created locally. This dynamic creates an FDI mirage. It inflates the top-line GDP figures to look like massive national growth, without building resilient, localized wealth for the people doing the actual work. And the primary fuel for this entire manufacturing engine, abundant, cheap rural labor, is running out. Economists call this the Lewis turning point. It is the dangerous intersection where a developing nation exhausts its surplus of cheap labor. When the workers run out, businesses have to compete for them, and wage demands sharply rise. Vietnam's demographic dividend officially ends by 2036. In just over a decade, the country will transition into a top-heavy aging population, with fewer young workers to support them. The old strategy of throwing endless, cheap human bodies at foreign assembly lines has an expiration date. That economic model is dead. The country now faces a rigid 10 to 20-year ultimatum. It is a strict race against time to upgrade the entire economy before the population ages out of the workforce entirely. If it fails, the nation plunges straight into the middle-income trap. It gets stuck paying high living costs and supporting a massive elderly population, but is left without the high-paying jobs required to fund it all. To escape this trap and become a high-income nation, capital has to be forcefully redirected. That means starving speculative land investments and pushing money directly into tech transfers, advanced research, and higher-value domestic production. National survival relies on prying wealth out of stagnant concrete and feeding it into high-tech innovation. But while the macroeconomy undergoes this painful surgery, how do you protect your own bank account in a high-interest, rapidly shifting environment?
The priority shifts from getting rich quickly to purely defensive survival. That means following the 50% rule, never borrowing more than half an asset's value to prevent the bank from liquidating you. And it requires immediately killing off high-interest consumer debt, the financial parasites that will drain you dry during a rate hike. The next major strategy is skill arbitrage. In an era dominated by artificial intelligence and volatile markets, your safest investment isn't a highly leveraged plot of land. It is your own head. High-level professional skills are the only assets that cannot be devalued by a sudden shift in the state bank's interest rate policy or a demographic cliff. When the dust settles on this great economic rebalancing, the survivors won't be the loudest land speculators or the ones who took the biggest risks. The survivors will be the highly skilled, highly disciplined producers.